Well, in his first interview with international media since being removed from power, he tells me, that is Imran Khan, how he believes the United States interfered to have him ousted.
On the 7th of March, Becky, Under Secretary of State in the US, who's responsible for South Asia, he calls our ambassador, a meeting between our ambassador in Washington. He tells our ambassador, in an official meeting, there are note takers on both sides. He tells the ambassador that unless you get rid of your Prime Minister Imran Khan in a vote of no confidence, which, by the way, hadn't been tabled as yet, but he seemed to know about it, he said, unless you get rid of him, Pakistan will suffer consequences. And then goes on to say, of course, if you get rid of him through the vote of no confidence, all will be forgiven. Such arrogance, apart from anything else. By the way, Becky, this guy should be sacked for bad manners and sheer arrogance. Imagine telling a country, an ambassador of a country of 220 million people that you get rid of your prime minister. So this is where it started. The next day, this vote of no confidence is tabled in our parliament.
And then follows... Why have you never made this public before? You are being very specific about what you allege was said.
Well, Becky, I put it in front of our cabinet. This cipher was read out in the cabinet. There are minutes of the cabinet. Then I presented it in our National Security Council, where all the service chiefs were present. Why did I present them? Because this was a blatant intervention in the internal affairs of Pakistan, a regime change.
As Prime Minister at the time, did you get in touch with the US President, with the US Secretary of State? What happened?
The National Security Council decided to give a démarche, protested to the US in Pakistan and in Washington. We issued it. This is all minuted. Then we presented it to the Parliament Committee, then the Speaker of Parliament, then the President of Pakistan, who has this cipher, he sent it to the Chief Justice of Pakistan that there should be an inquiry held in this blatant interference in the internal affairs of Pakistan.
Pakistan's new foreign minister says the United States and his country are entering a new engagement after what has been years of strained relations. And you and I have talked about those strained relations under your premiership. Do you believe, for the sake of Pakistan, that it is better to have a good relationship with the United States?
Becky, I had perfectly good relationship with the Trump administration. It's only when the Biden administration came and it coincided with what was happening in Afghanistan. And for some reason, which I still don't know, they never got in touch with me. There was no US ambassador to Pakistan. I have no idea. But look, my point is very simple. 220 million people of Pakistan elected me. My first responsibility is to the people of Pakistan. My responsibility is for the well-being. We have 50 million people living below the poverty line. So when Russia offers us 30% discount on oil and 30% discount on wheat imports, India does the same. India is part of the Quad, part of the strategic alliance with the US. India imports oil from the US, but for some reason, this was taken against me, as if I was being anti-US or anti-American.
The US, let me repeat, has rubbished the notion that they have been involved in regime change in Pakistan. You continue to assert what they suggest is a conspiracy theory here. Do you genuinely believe that the US has been behind a regime change in Pakistan?
Before this happened, before this meeting with Donald Lu and our ambassador, the US Embassy was calling members of my party who were some of the backbenchers who were not happy. They were having meetings with the US embassy. What were they meeting them? And they were the first ones who then jumped ship. And they were the ones who then offered $1 million each to buy my other members of parliament who actually jumped ship later on. Why would the US embassy be interested in backbenchers of our party?
So is the current government an American implant?
It's with their blessings. And you know, the painful thing, Becky, is not just that everyone, we all call it imported government, but the worst thing is there are a bunch of criminals. For 30 years, these guys have been plundering the country. 60% of the cabinet is on bail.
You were in Russia meeting President Putin the day he announced the war in Ukraine. The optics didn't and don't look good, do they?
They didn't, Becky, but let me explain to you, this visit was planned a long time back, and all the stakeholders in Pakistan were on board. The military wanted hardware from the Russians. We wanted oil. There was a gas pipeline which was being negotiated for the past 6 years before my government came in. So this trip was planned a long time before. How would I know that the day I land in Moscow, President Putin decides to go into Ukraine? I wasn't supposed to know that.
Do you regret that trip now?
I would regret if we had known about the invasion and then I had gone in, I guess I would have regretted it, because I do not believe in military solutions. I have opposed all military ways of achieving political ends. So, but I wasn't supposed to know.
Imran Khan, will you run again? Will you run again as Prime Minister in the next elections?
Whenever the next elections take place, not only will we run, but I can predict right now that this will become the biggest party in Pakistan's history, because people are so incensed and feel insulted that these criminals have been foisted upon us, who have been plundering this country for 30 years. There is anger in Pakistan. And unfortunately, because of all this becoming public, the cipher, Donald Rue's comments, who should be sacked for bad manners, there's anti-Americanism. Because you know that so many regime changes, whether US, like in Iran, Prime Minister Mossadegh, like in South American countries, when unpopular governments are foisted on a people, the resentment then goes to against the US. And unfortunately, yes, there is anti-Americanism right now.